3 years following the virus outbreak, humans have swiftly morphed into zombies with an unquenchable craving for blood. As of now, no remedy has been discovered. Currently, the zombies are fervently chasing 2 soldiers who have been instructed to head to the CDC for a mission. Their commanding officer, Mark, has just secured the iron gate as the zombies surge towards it. The zombies' eyes are pale as they relentlessly batter the gate. At that moment, Mark receives another directive from the command center. Operator Citizen Z informs him, "We need you to escort the researcher, Dr. Murch, to California with a vaccine. Your extraction helicopter is already on its way. This mission is of the utmost importance. Please ensure its success." Mark glances at the map and realizes that California is thousands of miles away. However, as a soldier, he refuses to retreat. Aware that the gate won't hold for much longer, Mark directs his team to fend off the zombies while he searches for Dr. Murch inside the research facility. On the second floor, only 2 stray zombies pose minor threats. After extensive searching, Mark eventually locates Dr. Murch, still conducting critical experiments. 3 condemned prisoners are restrained on surgical tables. Mark urges her to evacuate with them, but Dr. Murch declines, viewing this as her final opportunity to test the vaccine. The inmates protest loudly against being experimental subjects. Dr. Murch firmly asserts that if successful, their sacrifice could save millions of lives. One of the convicts, Murphy, protests vehemently. Seeing Dr. Murch's reluctance to leave, Mark waits anxiously for her to finish the experiment quickly. The first volunteer is swiftly injected with the green zombie virus. Within 30 seconds, he starts convulsing and then goes still. With blood spurting, Mark swiftly shoots him to end his suffering and urges Dr. Murch to hasten. The other 2 volunteers witness this gruesome scene and scream for help, but it's in vain. Next, the bald volunteer predictably transforms into a zombie. Finally, it's Murphy's turn, who yells and struggles. However, his assistant disregards his protests and administers the injection. Dr. Murch watches anxiously. This is their final opportunity. Suddenly, there's a knock at the door. Mark sees it's one of his men and opens the door, only to find the soldier has turned into a zombie and lunges at a staff member. Mark swiftly dispatches the soldier and faces several more zombies rushing in. He shoots and eliminates them quickly. Meanwhile, the extraction helicopter arrives overhead to retrieve Dr. Murch. Mark hurriedly pulls Dr. Murch, who is frightened, towards the helicopter to evacuate. However, Murphy suddenly sits up, pleading with them not to abandon him. But now, Mark can only prioritize Dr. Murch's safety. Suddenly, the previously attacked staff member also transforms into a zombie and ferociously bites Murphy. Immediately afterward, 7 more zombies burst in. The scene is horrific. Meanwhile, Mark and Dr. Murch reach the stairwell leading to the rooftop. Dr. Murch notes that the earlier man did not undergo mutation. He could be their last hope for vaccine research. Mark instructs Dr. Murch that if he doesn't return within 2 minutes, she should not wait any longer. In the background, Murphy's screams echo through the entire research facility. Eventually, Mark succeeds in rescuing Murphy, but they miss the helicopter. Surprisingly, Murphy shows no signs of mutation. They head to a nearby survivor camp known as Blue Sky Camp, where it appears people have been managing relatively well amidst the apocalypse. Once inside the conference room, Mark speaks decisively, "I need you to supply us and transport us to the next stronghold. Our people will meet us there and continue the journey to California." The camp leaders, former National Guard members, hesitate to obey, knowing the government no longer exists. Mark senses their hesitation and speaks frankly. He explains the necessity of transporting this individual to the California lab, as he holds the key to developing a vaccine against the zombie virus. This revelation surprises the man, who introduces himself as Garnet. He assures Mark, "Roberta and I will escort you to the next stronghold, but after that, you're on your own." Mark expresses gratitude. Garnet's subordinate, standing nearby, wants to object, believing one shouldn't trust anyone in the apocalypse, but Mark's commitment to national interest convinces them otherwise. Garnet swiftly prepares supplies, and Roberta takes the wheel to depart from Blue Sky Camp. They are focused on reaching their destination swiftly. However, just an hour into their journey, they begin patrolling outside. Upon reaching the water's edge, they freeze at the sight of hundreds of floating corpses in the lake. Breathing heavily, they are baffled by the scene. As they approach the nearest corpse, a more terrifying development unfolds. Zombies from the entire lake suddenly become agitated and charge towards them. Blue Sky Camp faces imminent danger. 3 hours later, Roberta, who had departed, still couldn't reach the man and received no response from the camp. A sense of foreboding grips her heart. Garnet grows increasingly anxious and suggests returning to assess the situation, but Mark remains resolute in his mission. Frustrated, Garnet confronts him, insisting that Mark should prioritize their people over his mission. Mark levels his gun at them once more, appealing to their sense of duty, emphasizing that ensuring Murphy safely reaches California is their top priority. Roberta, puzzled, questions Murphy's significance. Mark, without explanation, forcibly removes Murphy from the vehicle. In a grave tone, Mark commands, "Show them why you're so crucial and why so many good people sacrificed for you." Reluctantly, Murphy complies, lifting his shirt to reveal scabbed wounds covering his body. Mark explicitly states that these are bite marks from 8 zombies. They are stunned, as surviving zombie bites is deemed impossible. Mark explains that he injected himself with an experimental vaccine just before being bitten. If he reaches California, his blood could be used to produce more antibodies, potentially saving all the remaining survivors. At that moment, Roberta's radio crackles to life. It's a man named Doc contacting her. He explains that they had gone out to search for supplies and returned to find the camp in chaos. Gunshots ring out in the background, and Garnet's expression darkens as he listens. The radio signal abruptly cuts off. Hearing this, Roberta can no longer disregard Mark's urgency. She immediately turns the car around and heads back the way they came. Meanwhile, Doc and his group hurry towards the camp, hoping to find survivors. As they approach the road, they spot a large bus and breathe a sigh of relief, assuming the children have managed to escape. But then they notice someone in the backseat has turned into a zombie. The car moves erratically, indicating a struggle inside, and finally crashes into a nearby tree. As soon as the car door opens, several zombies charge out, causing Doc and his group to turn and flee in terror. The children had also perished. The zombies in Z Nation differed significantly from those in The Walking Dead. Not only were they swift and agile, but their mutations were also more advanced. They scrambled up the hill, only to encounter 4 or 5 zombies blocking the road ahead. Without hesitation, they leapt into the back of a nearby truck as the zombies closed in from behind. Inside the truck, Garnet wanted to ask about any survivors at the camp, but Doc shook his head, indicating there were none, not even the children. The news weighed heavily on everyone, casting a solemn mood over the vehicle. Even Roberta, who was driving, seemed distracted. Mark, however, remained focused on their mission. He took charge, directing Roberta to turn left soon toward a nearby military stronghold. Delivering Murphy to California was their utmost priority, forming the core of their mission. 30 minutes later, they arrived at the stronghold. The place lay in ruins, smoke billowing, and the gates breached. It appeared deserted. Mark gripped his gun tightly as he ventured inside to investigate. Underneath a vehicle, he discovered military personnel who had turned into zombies. He reluctantly dispatched them, realizing the stronghold had fallen. The others cautiously disembarked from the vehicle, vigilant of their surroundings. Except for Murphy, who displayed a lack of composure. Mark, operating with military precision, delegated tasks among the group. He instructed Garnet and Roberta to inspect the building, while the rest checked the vehicle to ensure it could be operational at any moment. Despite some discontent, they complied without voicing objections, following Mark's lead. Suddenly, Roberta seemed to hear something and asked Garnet if he heard it too, a faint cry of a baby. Gradually, the sound grew louder, drawing their attention to an abandoned car where they spotted a small baby staring up at the ceiling with wide eyes. Roberta cautiously approached and opened the car door to assess the situation. The driver appeared to have suffered a fatal gunshot wound, leaving them perplexed about what had occurred. Roberta gently lifted the child, who was surprisingly clean and well-behaved, with an endearing appearance. Garnet swiftly took the baby from her, expressing a desire to adopt the child. Roberta questioned the feasibility of caring for a child under these circumstances, but Garnet remained undeterred, accustomed to adapting to unforeseen challenges. Meanwhile, the 3 individuals examining the vehicle noticed a group of zombies surrounding an iron cage near a building. Armed and ready, they charged at the zombies, swiftly eliminating them within minutes. To their astonishment, they found a woman crouched inside the cage. Mac tapped on the railing, calling out to the woman, but received no response. With no other option, he pried open the lock and entered the room. Mac gently tapped the woman's shoulder, but to his surprise, she suddenly attacked. Addie rushed forward, urging her to stop, explaining they were friendly and had just rescued her. Upon hearing this, the woman calmed down slightly, stepping back and apologizing, claiming she must have dozed off. Doc found it hard to believe someone could sleep in such an environment. They decided to rest in a nearby house. Mark, still cautious of the unfamiliar woman, questioned why she had been locked in a cage and if she had committed any wrongdoing. Her response was peculiar. She explained she had locked herself in to hide from zombies but had misplaced the key. According to her, the military had arrived, shooting many survivors, which drew a horde of zombies, resulting in the area's downfall. While discussing, Roberta noticed zombies approaching from 200 meters away. Mark immediately called them to action, directing Mac and others to gather food and weapons. Turning to Garnet, he tasked him with protecting Murphy and the child inside the house, while he and Roberta prepared to confront the zombies outside. They were to reconvene at this spot in 5 minutes. After Mark finished speaking, he turned to open the door, but the others stood still, exchanging glances. They were unhappy about being treated like subordinates. Noticing their silence, Mark turned back and approached them as if they were new recruits. Only when he raised his voice did they finally react. Soon, Addie and the others reached an open area, tasked with searching for supplies, particularly checking the bodies for anything useful. Unbeknownst to them, a sniper had them in his sights, and they were completely unaware. Doc spotted a hatchet and excitedly began to retrieve it as a weapon. The others rushed over to assist, but they struggled to find a safe angle to help, worried they might accidentally injure Doc. Just as their anxiety peaked, a loud explosion echoed, blowing a large hole in the zombies' heads. Meanwhile, inside the house, Garnet was keeping an eye on the adorable child. Murphy, however, seemed to have heard something, though he was a bit cowardly, fearing the zombies outside. Garnet cautiously approached the door with his weapon, wondering if Murphy had simply misheard in the stillness.